podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Join us on this week's WRRAP podcast, where we take a look at the West Wales teams, Ospreys and Scarlets. Where will they end up at the end of this season? Who have they brought in? Who have they got rid of? And what can we expect going forward? There's obvious Ospreys news to discuss. And there was a women's game last Friday, if you didn't notice that one. Join us for all of that and the usual load of rubbish. There's plenty of that there as well. Let's get going. You're listening to WRRAP, the Welsh Regional Rugby Appreciation Podcast. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the WRRAP Podcast with me, Lee G. Joining me, as always, full crew, James, Jamie and Harley. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So we've got all the arguing out the way already. I think that's fair. I think some people listen to us to just so they can hear us argue, but we've got all of that out the way.
I haven't.
All right, okay. There we go.
I've still got plenty more for James.
We've done all the arguing. No, we haven't. Yes, we haven't done the arguing. Right. Let's start with the normal then, gents. Let's start with drink of the week. I'm going to go first this week. Normally I go last, but I'm going to go first this week because I'm not drinking for the foreseeable future. So I'm going to spend the first half of the season looking at non-alcohol beer or low alcohol. And the first one I've come across, available in all good supermarkets, is this one called St. Peter's Without. And I shan't be drinking much of it, I can tell you that. It's a rich and malty taste bursting with lasting flavour. What that flavour is, but to me, it's not sitting very well. So it's there. I've done what I've done, said I was going to do. I'm on the no alcohol. It's not been a great start. Who wants to go next? Harley, you can go next, mate.
Well, continue the theme. I've gone for a slightly lower one. So this is the last of my Padstow stash. So this is the shallow end. Yeah, can go through. Lovely design can. As with all Padstow beers, no wanky bollocks. But this is only a 2.8, so it's sort of more of a, what bitters used to be. Nice easy drinks. No real strength to them. Just nice tasty things. Yeah, I just love it. It's just a nice little refreshing thing. I've got to have to start looking for beers again now. So that's the end of my little cubby hole full. I
remember when I was growing up and I used to go to my granddad's for Christmas and he used to have Courage Light in little cans and it was like 2%. And when you're 14, back in those days, when you're 14 and you're drinking the 2%, and like that was hardcore stuff then. So that's the sort of stuff you want, mate. Jamie, what go on.
It just reminds me. So I don't know what it is. There was a session with the kayaking club, I think, of the sort of French little stubby bottles, and I don't think they were particularly strong either. But just everyone we just go through cases of them all the time.
I remember them. JB, what have you got for us? Save us.
I have got another beer from Bristol Brewery. This is a blueberry muffin sour, 6%. Let's have a look at the wanky bollocks. Lashings of blueberries, pastry and vanilla resting on just the right amount of tartness to tease your taste buds. It does what it says on the tin. It's a beer that tastes like blueberries, and as me and Gavin would say on the Dragon Slayer pod, it's perfectly fine. So that's that.
Can you taste the pastry though, Jay?
Just about, yeah. There's the colour of it for our YouTube watchers. Looks like Ribena a bit, but it is quite nice actually. I will say it is quite fruity. I like this one. Bristol Brewery.
Okay. James, finish us off with an absolute classic. Have we got another classic again, mate?
Yeah, I have finally got it. I've got the Tesco Lemon and Lime Zero.
Yeah,
very refreshing. You joke, but I am genuinely obsessed with this stuff. Like, I love Sprite and I love lemonade as a thing entirely, but I had this, like, my in-laws bought it because it was always like cheap and on like club card deals, and I'm just obsessed with it. And they've now started doing it in bottles, so I can have it with a meal deal as well. So I look like a right weirdo because obviously with a meal deal you can get whatever you want. It's going to get reduced to £3.60 with a club card. But there's me getting the 80p bottle of lemon and lime zero. But it's genuinely lovely stuff.
Okay, so the only one of us that's actually got a proper strength and taste in beer this week is Jamie. So you could say,
The taste is fantastic in wine. Thank you very much.
yeah, but and this is my point. You see, you've got to balance the two things there, Harley, as you do in pre-season. See, bit of a link there. So, pre-season, we're building up. So let's have a quick chat about first proper week of pre-season last week. So James, obviously a win. We lost Harley.
We've won 4 games. Don't know what you're on about.
Oh, right, we'll talk about that. Let's talk about pre-season, and is it just completely pointless? Are they better just holding them behind closed doors, or just trying to fill a stadium with 12-year-olds and all of that kind of stuff? Is there any point in doing pre-seasons the way we do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't think pre-season is, as Jamie pointed out last week, it's not an indicator about how your season is going to go.
No.
But it can give you a good idea of where you're at and what you need to work on. So, we've got a shorter preseason than everyone else this year. We've only got 2, what you want to call it, match days, where we had the Origin series, which we incorporated, obviously 3 30-minute games against our SRC clubs, which was almost, for professional, it was like a conditioned game, which was a really good success. Everyone loved it. The SRC clubs loved it. And then we went away to Exeter, for a more traditional sort of Anglo-Welsh battle, where relatively full-strength sides went at it in a proper ding-dong, and by all accounts, it was a ding-dong. What does that tell me about us going into the season is that who's on form, who's come back from injury. So Jack Morgan's first game back. It also tells me that Jack Morgan is captain. I'll come on to these things later, but it gives me an indication of where were we at the end of the summer, right? We lost to Munster in a dogged effort. And reading the reports for Saturday was we're still dogged, we're still very forwards oriented, but we're trying to incorporate more of an offload game. We are trying to spread it out a bit. So, yeah, I think it is a good litmus test of where you are going into the first game of the season. Should it be taken as gospel? Obviously not, because pre-season is going to try new combinations, new patterns. You are going to try things, and you're probably not going to play with the same freedom in a regular season game because there's jeopardy. You lose a preseason game, you're not going to get relegated. You'll just get slated in the press.
Which kind of brings us on to myself and Jamie. Jamie, was there any point in the Dragons kind of pre-season so far? Are you finding anything there?
So the Dragons have made a conscious decision to play a lot of youth in pre-season. And, we've had the likes of Owen Conker really stepping up. So we scored again last week against a fully loaded Bristol. So a young Dragons team lost 40 points to 19 to a fully loaded Bristol team at Clifton RFC. And Bristol, they were fully loaded, mind. They had Max Malins, AJ McGinty, Harry Randall, Ellis Genge, Harry Fag, all the rest of it. The last 10 minutes of the game, our pack apparently had an average age of under 21. There was a lot of kids out there. So I believe the approach is for the next game, which is against Bath on Friday, they're going to go more fully loaded. And Bath certainly will as well, because they played 2 games on the weekend, one to Cardiff. They sent a weak squad down there and lost. They played a stronger squad at the Reg against Ealing, and they lost that as well. So I'm hoping that we see 2 strong teams, because I do think the Dragons now need to start building a bit of continuity and playing some of the more senior players, because they don't want to be going into this first block of URC undercooked. And we have played a lot of academy boys in these first 2 games. But, it's like James said, they have their uses. You get to find out who's stepping up, the youngsters, the combinations. But I had my rant about this on the pod last week, didn't I? Nobody should be taking pre-season results seriously. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of comments on social media on the weekend of people who are taking these results far too seriously. They mean nothing. As I said, I got a perfect example. Dragons went unbeaten last pre-season, the only region to go unbeaten. And what happened? They had a terrible season. So it just goes to show pre-season results don't mean anything. It's nice to win, but on the grand scheme of things, they're not relevant, but they are a useful run out, aren't they? You know, they do have their uses, but please don't take these results seriously because they don't mean anything. For God's sake, Glasgow lost 33-0 to Zebra. That would never, ever happen in the URC, would it? And I doubt Glasgow fans are really upset about that result. So let's be sensible and let's see what the season brings. Don't read too much into pre-season. It's just not a good idea.
I think the issue there, Jamie, is you called for people to be sensible, and this is rugby. So
Well, exactly, yeah. Especially the Facebook lot. Don't get me started on Facebook, Welsh Rugby Facebook, especially Dragons Facebook this week. Honest to God, I could bang my head against the wall with some of the shit that's been written on those forums.
Harley,
Anyway.
Harley. So let's flip this back round. So your guys won. Did you? I mean, looking at those two sides going into that game, would you have taken a win as any indication of the season?
I mean, maybe not as an indication of the season. I think it was definitely more about the game that I watched, and there's some things I quite liked. Ewan Stevens' debut on the wing, he looks really quick. He looks really ready to set into the shoes. I thought when he came on, as we expected, Ed Byrne showed a lot of leadership. Ed McNally was everywhere. That was good to see. Mason Grady at 12 is something we can use in a stopgap. You can see just how less effective he is in that channel than he is when he's at 13. He's able to sort of come in and he's using more of his pace and his size. But I mean, other than that, it was a really fucking horrid night. Like absolutely pissing down with rain. I know my car nearly went off the road about 4 times on my drive back. This is the level of water on the roads, and it's not really seen. I mean, people like James will have mocked saying, "Oh, well, you should have beaten them by about at least 73 million points and stuff." But that's just the ribbon we're going to use for each other. Like
that's what I'm about to say in a minute as well.
Like I bet there are Edinburgh fans who are taking the piss out of the Glasgow supporting mates for that Zebra score. That's more. It's quite nice when you see new combinations. So obviously the first clue we had to Jacob Beetham being used as a 12 last season was in one of the pre-season games when everyone thought he was coming on for Win It, and he came on for Ben Thomas, slotted in at 12, and okay. So that's and it gives you an idea of how the coach wants to play. The downside of this, I suppose, anything is like with the game against Ealing, Rory Jennings looks like he might be out for quite a while, which is leaving our 12 berth. The whole point of us signing Rory Jennings was so we had a backup for Ben Thomas, who's got a niggle, and then we end up having to throw we had to throw Mason Grady in there because Stefan Emmanuel is still quite young. He has literally only just started playing for the under-20s. So there is always that. But it's the same like the fourth Ultimate International when the player gets crocked, and you're like, well, what's the fucking point in that? You just killed you just killed one of the clubs now.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance. It really is. I'll be honest. I quite like the idea of what the Ospreys did with playing their feeder clubs. I thought that was a nice kind of gesture to the clubs, and they do get to see different things, and it is, like you say, more a condition game, so you're a bit more in control of it. But yeah, it would be better if they actually streamed them. No, not broadcast. You're not expecting broadcast, but if it was like just a stream, so you could see something as a fan, I think that
some of them have though, haven't they? I know
Osprey streamed the Origin series.
Yeah,
it wasn't our decision, the Exeter, because Exeter didn't broadcast it. BBC Radio Devon said they would, and then just talked about Torquay versus fucking Aldershot, whatever it was, for the whole time. So you couldn't even listen into what was happening. They weren't even jumping back and forth. So there is something to be said that you should stream them, and historically at home Ospreys have been very good at streaming them. They've always at least gone to their Facebook live, almost like S4C Click, really.
I think that's more of what they need to do. All of them need to be doing that sort of thing, just to if nothing else, it improves your YouTube figures.
Or Facebook. Facebook is a great way to stream the games. By the way, I got a point of correction. It was 31-0, not 33-0. Zebra Glasgow. I've double checked just in case someone gets in touch. So it was actually 31-0.
They missed that conversion, Jamie. Don't you forget?
Point still stands though.
Can I say something?
31-0.
It's not in a way slagging off Cardiff. It's more making a point about what pre-season can reveal. is that, yes, it reveals the new stuff and you're exposed to the new stuff, but it actually shows where you still are. So in the Ospreys case, it's that we still got not a lot of depth in our prop department, in that we were playing literally a bloke from Bridgend who's semi-pro, starting against Scott CO on the weekend. But if I take Cardiff, for example, in their 2 pre-season games, was it 6 of their tries they've conceded or something like that have been from driving mauls, which we knew were an Achilles heel. Now, that's not to say that Cardiff aren't working on it. They probably actively are, and Cornel Van Seal has probably made it a top priority. But it's still, and I hate to agree with him because there's a prominent Twitter figure who's a Cardiff fan who's pointed this out on the forums and on X as well. But it's right. It's still exposing a glaring weakness. And the same with Scarlet's Lee. Sort of reading around the forums of people who were there and comments is that Scardiff. That's
Cardiff.
Cardiff.
New merger.
The standalones.
No mergers on this.
Sorry,
pod now.
the
We've had enough merger
standalones.
talk.
No, is that the defense was still too passive and still in for the majority of the game. You know, I can't comment for Joe, but what it, as much as it reveals new things to us because we're looking at new signings, new combinations, it can also give us a stark reminder of where a team was at the tail end of last year.
What I've seen from the Scarlet, again, I didn't see it. So what I've seen from the Scarlets game is that the first half was very good in terms of defence, because there was a pretty strong front row out there. And then second half, we basically played in Academy 15, give or take, with a couple of players on here and there. And what happened. So, yeah, swings and roundabouts. There are pros, there are cons. It's a
But there's
fact.
context as well, isn't it? Because
James,
I'll just add,
stop
the
taking-
Dragons has not played anywhere near their first 15 yet. They've
Yeah,
played a
they've never-
lot of kids, and there's people on Dragons forums kicking off. I'm like, they haven't played anywhere near what they would play in the URC. Now, that will change this weekend, so I'm not overly concerned.
Yeah.
So just have a bit of context about the kids that the Regents are playing. We're not playing our full strength teams either,
Yeah.
so that does have to be taken into
I
account.
mean, admittedly, there's only 2 of them or 3 of them, but we haven't played any of our Wales internationals yet either.
Well, there
The
we
ones
go.
that were on
Yeah.
tour.
So,
You know,
no,
Cardiff are similar.
nobody's allowed to put any crazy shit on Facebook because Jamie's blood pressure won't cope with it for another week. Is that about it, Jamie? Is that where we
Pretty
are?
much,
next?
yeah.
I've got some takes.
Oh, and
Right.
conquer for Wales.
Maybe one day.
Wasn't that Stephen Thomas list?
Probably.
Right, let's move on to the Ospreys. So normally we start the show with a bit of a news desk and some big announcements from the week, come-ins, go-ins, leavings, all of this kind of stuff. So we knew we got the Ospreys section coming up, so we're going to slot it in there. So talk us through your take on the news to start with, James, and then we'll go into pre-season, mate.
Yeah, you know, Jack Morgan as captain, really like that decision. He's a Swansea boy. Now, so obviously the news came out on Friday that Toby Booths will be leaving the region at the end of the 24-25 season. So the expiry of his current contract, and that Mark Jones, current defence coach, and Justin Tibrick, current player, will be retiring and taking over as defence coach. A move that was met with a lot of shock and anger and denial and people weeping and all these things.
But would you crying, James? That's the question. Because I've seen a lot of Ospreys
I
fans
mean,
on social media saying they're crying. Did
I
you
had a
shed tears?
I had a screaming 4-month-old in my arms while I was trying to watch the video. So yes, I was crying, but for a different reason.
Mad.
But no, so it's come out that essentially it's a mutual decision, and that no formal offer to Toby Booth was made for a new contract, but discussions were had and were being had before Lance Bradley came in. So for context, Lance Bradley came in the first week of January. So discussions have been ongoing essentially 2023 end of. But nothing could come to fruition. There's lots of rumors floating around, which I won't go into because I'm not here to talk about conjecture. So that's where we are. And that's what the future holds. It has come out and they said that if a suitable offer essentially came in to buy Toby Booth out of his contract for this year, they'd look and discuss it. I think people are reading a bit too much into that. It's very rare you get people bought out of contracts in rugby because there's simply not enough money. But that's where we are. I know a lot of people are looking more and more into this, and there's a lot of anger, and it's a very raw situation right now. But that's where we are. I mean, I'm gutted as an Ospreys fan. You know, he came in when we were. I put this on X, but he came in when we were at our lowest ebb. You know, we were losing 44-0 to the Scarlets. We'd won 2 games all season. We'd lost at home to Southern Kings. You know,
They were happy days, James. They were happy days.
But I'd said if Rock Bottom had a basement, we were the tenants. Because we'd gone from, you know, not 3 years before Booth took over, we were the highest point scorers in Pro 14 history, you know, scoring on average the most points in the league under Tandy. We still have the record for a perfect group stage in the All Challenge Cup, you know, perfect 30 or whatever it was. You know, we were, and then we just hit rock bottom. You know, I look at some of the squads when Booth came in. It was a bit like, you can argue, it's a bit like when Klopp came into Liverpool, right? And the squad that Klopp was working with, and it was a slow, gradual build up to, you know, he didn't come in and promise trophies. He didn't come in and promise that we were going to win the Challenge Cup or the Pro 14 or the ERC. He said we're going to create a program that works, and he has. And he's created systems and pathways for both players and coaches to thrive.
So, do you think I mean, he did speak a lot in that video about he's achieved what he came in to do.
Yeah.
Do you think that he's gone, that some of that is on him, and he's gone, do you know what? I've done what I said I was going to do. You can't really, given the situation, funding and this, that, and the other, it's difficult to take it higher. So quit while you're ahead, sort of a thing.
Yeah, I think from a logical point of view, you can only take something so far. You can only take a project, and actually, we all know, being in Welsh rugby, that sticking around too long can tarnish your reputation and your legacy. You know, when you might feel that you can take a squad so far, and I don't necessarily believe that about Booth, but I do believe that I haven't seen maybe enough evolution in backs play that I'd like to, even though the stats say otherwise. We're scoring more tries on average, backs are scoring more tries, blah, blah, blah. Was Mark Jones always the natural successor? Is another question, because he was brought in and people were quite surprised that he came in a assistant role, in a system role as defence coach, because you could say that over the years, I know he was at struggling Worcester, but he's put the work in to become a head coach.
But he did well at RGC. You know, his first appointment at RGC.
Crusaders.
He was at Crusaders in Canterbury with Scott Robertson and Rog, you know, so it's not like people are acting as if Mark Jones has never coached before.
Yeah.
And with the Tipperick thing, it says a lot about the magnitude of this announcement that Tipperick has not been spoken about at all, which is what he wants, probably. You know, it's the announcement of one of Wales's greatest open sides, one of the most naturally talented players that we've produced since the golden era in terms of raw skill. If you want to talk about the Welsh way, no one personifies that more than Justin Tipperick because of what he could do. Was he as good at the breakdown as Sam Warburton? No. Was he? You know, all these different things. So, but he's also cut his teeth as a coach as well, albeit not. He's been coaching for years. You know, he coached me back in 2016 or whatever it was.
And so he's still recovering from it, mate. He still has flashbacks.
Look, yeah. But what I'm saying is he's not immune to it. When he's been injured, and he's had a couple of injuries the last few years, he doesn't sit in the stands in the West Stand with a beer in his hand. He sits in the coaching box.
Mm.
He sits there with a headset on, doing this because he wants to be a coach. So, look, am I gutted? Of course I am. It's the man who took us, to where we are now, to URC playoffs, to Challenge Cup knockouts. Of course I am. Am I optimistic about the future? Yes, I am. Do I like that we have contingency and transparency? Absolutely. And that's all there is to say about it. There's no point sitting here speculating over what could be, what might have happened, because that's what social media is for. That's what social media is a trial. Everything will be looked at with a fine tooth comb.
No, that's fair enough, but there is a lot of speculation. And to me, I think there's more to this than meets the eye. And I'll just say this. So back in February, when Lance Bradley was asked about a new deal for Toby Booth, he said, and I quote from the BBC, "I am working well with Toby and I hope he stays here for a long time." 7 months later, he's announced he's leaving. That just don't sound right to me. I'm not going to speculate on why, because I know a lot of people are doing that. What I am saying is I think there's just more to this than meets the eye.
There is that. We asked Lance Bradley on the Irie in January about it.
Mm.
These are questions that have been floated around for ages. And one thing Toby Booth says very well is a poker face, right? Because he said at the supporters Q&A that he'd love to stay, probably noting that he was going.
Yeah,
right.
He knew by then that he was going.
Yeah, and stuff can change in 7 months, because he could over the summer have said, actually, I might have taken this group as far as I can go. I've embedded a culture. I've created, what I need to do, or what I set out to do, like Lee said. And he feels that now maybe the right time is to go. The offer wasn't right on the table. He really likes the high performance side of sport. He's a very analytical guy. He likes the speaking circuit. So look, whoever winds up having Toby Booth, and I do think he might end up in international management, because I think he's ready. Will get a very good coach.
It'd be interesting where he ends up, isn't it? Will he go back to England, maybe work for the RFU or an English Premiership?
Canada desperately needs someone.
Yeah, Canada. I was thinking USA.
Russia are always in line for a decent coach. Harley, what do you make of the timing of it? Let me just ask you that quickly. What do you make of the timing of it, mate?
I think it's going to be one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, if it's suddenly announced, say, end of the season, oh, by the way, I'm off, everyone will be like, oh, well, you haven't given time for everyone to get used to it and get to prepare. Now everyone's going off, oh, it's right at the start of the season, and you might leave part way, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. I think it must be nice that you've got clarity. That was one of the big things we were saying, the whole Die Young thing, was we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know if he was going to come back, if he was going to go. We all suspected he'd go after all the allegations. But at least with this, we know he's gone. But what I was interested in is when one of the things that Boothie did was bring Duncan Jones up to, and he was like,
oh, he was fucking good. I
love Duncan Jones. I want justice for Duncan Jones. I think he should throw his toys out the pram and immediately come over to Cardiff and give us a good scrum. No, but it's just, I mean, Booth's done wonders for the Ospreys. I mean, I may have, me and Hugh may take the piss out of him saying, oh, our hard local developed talent is like, what do you mean, that guy you brought in from the Crusaders and all the Scarlets you pinched?
Yeah.
You got Ratty back after we made him decent.
He's a great coach, and I think he will be missed by the Ospreys. But for me, this will go one or two ways, though, right? Because you'll know this, Harley. This is a similar situation to Cardiff. Danny Wilson announced early that he was leaving in that one season. That galvanised Cardiff. They went on to win the Challenge Cup, and the players said after they wanted to do it for Danny Wilson. So this could be a situation for the Ospreys now, where obviously he is adored there. The players love him. This is one final push, one final hurrah for Toby Booth. Let's actually go out now and win a trophy or get to the European final. So, or it could go the other way, man. This could be distraction, because the Ospreys can't ignore, they can ignore the speculation to a degree, but they can't stop it. There's always going to be supporters questioning why it's happened and all the stuff around it. So It can go two ways. It'll be a distraction, or they'll use it to their motivation. But he deserves a good send off.
What is, from an Osprey point of view, which is really good, is that it's not like the replacement is going to be coming into a new environment.
Yeah, there's continuity.
The successor is in the office next door or on the desk next to it.
But then again, sometimes that works. That can work both ways as well. They start playing,
but it's the closest Ospreys have to that is the Alan Clark situation. So Steve Tandy went, after fighting all his players, and then we said, "Oh, we're going to go on a worldwide search for a world-class coach." We ended up with a Northern Irish forwards coach, who's already at the club. Whereas this time, they've said, right, we're not, maybe not going to go on a search, because actually we know that Mark Jones knows the system, knows how he wants to develop that system, because those who remember RGC obviously enjoyed their best period under Mark Jones, who played some bloody good rugby. They won the Welsh Cup in style that year, along with a young, ambitious Welsh coach. That will be a full Welsh coaching setup at the Ospreys then. So look, it's not like, what's more comforting to fans is that it's Boise and it's Tips, rather than we're bringing someone else in who's gonna dig up the system and do something different. So we could sit here and discuss semantics all night, but the fact of the matter is he's leaving. I'm grateful, but I'm also excited for what the future could hold.
So we'll move on to Ospreys pre-season now, but I'll just finish up by saying, listening to what he said in the video, to me it sounds like what you said, James, about elite sport, and I reckon somewhere along, a lot of what he talks about is the psychology, the systems that it takes to get to where it is, rather than rugby. So I think we'll see him pop up in another elite sport somewhere else. Probably.
He's gonna go to Southampton, because he's always loved Southampton Football Club.
So you've listened to a podcast,
right,
and taken the wrong thing out.
Well, let's be honest. He is the Ted Lasso of Welsh rugby, isn't he, Toby? For this find
I was more
cringy as hell, but it works for him. It does work for him. And I listened to our Ospreys pod, James, when you interviewed Toby Booth, and he said, look, he made a big joke about the find away stuff, but he said it's all very well me saying it, but the players have to believe it. And to be fair, he's right, and the players did believe it. So yeah, it is very Ted Lasso, the stuff he comes out with, but it works. And
I was more thinking of Clive Woodward when he went to Southampton.
Oh God!
I got exactly what you meant.
I'm glad someone got it.
Well, I forgot about that, to be honest, but he's still Ted Lasso anyway. So
yes.
Right, let's talk rugby then, James. Talk about Ospreys. Let's start with the basics. Who's gone? Who's in? What does the squad look like? And what's the feel through the summer?
Yeah, so obviously it's big names leaving. George North, Alex Cuthbert. Obviously, I think the biggest one is Nicky Smith. We can't hide the fact, he battered the Scarlets again on Saturday. Oh, sorry, I said that out loud then. That was an internal thing.
Academy. Academy. Yeah,
he started, so he took you to the cleaners. But no, so obviously Nicky is the notable departure. In destructive scrummaging force, good in the carry, good leadership, senior Ospreys player, and speaking to not players but people within the club, a man so well respected at the club as well. He loved the Ospreys, and I don't blame him for leaving. A new challenge is something really exciting for a player, and all the power to him. I hope he comes back. We've lost Rodri Lewis, exciting scrum half to Scarlets, local lad, good in the Wales under-20s, former season ticket holder, sang in the Ospreys choir. That's how committed he was with Yestin. So yeah, not so much a clean out, but very much a wage bill sort of let up, had some significant weight taken off it. In terms of bringing people in, we've gone, quite simple. So Steph Thomas from Scarlets, obviously cousin of Gareth, has come in. Obviously, been identified by Duncan Jones that someone he can work with. Looked fine in pre-season. We brought in William Greatbanks, a 21-year-old French and Welsh qualified but English-born second row, who played Pro D2 last year. Big, athletic. He is currently carrying a knock, but big, athletic. Brought in Kieran Hardy to sort of give us a bit of experience at scrum half, because currently we're only sort of with Ruben as our most experienced one. Am I missing any more? Oh yeah, Daniel Kasende from the Cheetahs. So adds height to the wing. So he's 6'3", bit of power, loves fighting Scarlets players. So it ticks all my boxes, to be honest. And then some other ones under the radar. A player called Connor Moyes. We talked about this on the pod last week, but he's come from Nottingham Uni for Buck Super Rugby. Again, 6'3", 95 kilograms. Plays outside centre as well. Really good defensively, great on the kick chase. Really nice running style. So it's more building upon a really balanced and settled squad. I wasn't expecting big Hollywood signings, to be honest. I was more focused on keeping what we've got. So we've retained basically everyone we wanted to, bar Nicky. So we go into the season with quite a settled squad, albeit we lack depth at tight end. So I fully expect a Cheetahs tight end to come in at some point. We are getting Ivadi Boshoff back as centre on loan. That's widely known. So yeah, go on.
Combia. What?
Oh yeah, Combia.
I'm understanding that's a short-term deal to cover Kieran Giles' injury. Is
Keelan
it?
Giles is out until October at the minimum from the knock he picked up in Wales. So Combia has been brought in. I expect that deal to be made permanent if he carries his pre-season form into the Irk. He's only 25, Combia. I thought he was older. The fact that he's 25 and scoring, he's got a ridiculous strike rate in the Irk. So I fully expect that deal to be made permanent. He's one that every Scarlets fan, bar one I've spoken to, has said, why the fuck did we let him go? And that's not to say Scarlets haven't got good wingers. They've got some great wingers, but the form that guy can show, with all due respect to Tom Rogers, who I don't particularly rate, there's only one person I was keeping in that scenario, and it's not Tom Rogers. So yeah, Combi is a short-term deal. There is rumours we're bringing in Lucas Sataro as well.
He was playing for Carmarthen Quins on Saturday. So.
I don't think that's found. What is more promising is the players we brought into the SRC fold. So the likes of Ben Burnell is with Bridgend now. We brought Harvey Nash back over. You've got Luca Giannini at Swansea, who had a stormer against Ospreys in the SRC Origin game. So these wider young players who can potentially slot into a system. There's some good ones they brought in from the university system. So from a squad and a wider squad point of view, really, really good. Some really good youngsters coming through. Have no complaints really, apart from the lack of depth at tight end.
So, Harley, what have you made of the Ospreys so far? What are you expecting from them so far?
I just wanted to jump on James's point with the SRC, because they've like the likes of Bridgend and Aberystwyth picked up a lot of ex-Cardiff academy, and players who've been playing at Pontypridd and Merthyr. I'm quite glad, because they're very tiny players. So I'm glad they're getting a second chance at second cracker with the pro rugby. As for Ospreys in general, again, as James said, probably not the unbelievable depth they had last season. All right, maybe they can only put out 1.5 international quality packs, but they're still a really good side. I mean, I'm still not seeing how that ball gets past Keith at 12.
Oh, that's the other one I
So I don't
forgot.
think it matters.
Phil, Cocker and Singer.
Oh yeah, and they've got
Joe.
and basically if they decide they don't want Keith crashing up, they've got Phil Cotton Singer to crash it up now. So yeah, I mean I don't think it matters what wingers they have. They've just got to be good kick chasers because that's all they're going to do. But it works for them, so I wouldn't criticize it. As I said on the pod halfway through last season, I'd rather have a boring team who win every week than a exciting team who never win.
Which is an interesting debate for a week when there's less happening.
But it's not a debate. It's pro sport. You want to win. I'm sorry.
I'd argue that when Scarlets won with Pivac, we were winning and it was exciting. So
yeah, brilliant. But when you're not winning,
you
and
can
you're
do that
throwing
when
the
you've
ball
got
around.
when you're playing a £10 million budget, like a mini Leinster. But
Yeah,
you
that's
can't
what I'm
do it
saying.
now. We're all dragons now.
What I'm saying is it can be done. So, Jamie, what are you hoping for from the Ospreys this year, or expecting from the Ospreys this year?
Well, I'm still expecting them to be the best Welsh team. The thing about the Ospreys, they got the advantage the other Welsh teams don't have, is their pack. They have got a strong pack, and I still expect them to have a very strong pack. Now, yes, they have lost Nicky Smith. We all love Nicky Smith on this pod, don't we? But they have brought in Steph Thomas from Scarlets, not to be confused with the Wales Online journalist, of course. Now, he never really kicked on at the Scarlets lead, did he? Let's be honest, Steph Thomas. But I got a feeling he's going to come good at the Ospreys. There is definitely something about him. And, of course, they have got Gav Thomas as well, who we know is a good scrummager. And if you look at last season, they had a lot of injuries to guys like Hugh Sutton, Adam Beard, etc. If they have better luck with injuries, they'll still have a very strong pack. And that's what gives them the advantage over the other Welsh teams. They can go toe-to-toe with the big packs of South Africa and the Irish teams. Unfortunately, the rest of us, we can't do that, but Ospreys can. I do think they need to sharpen up their attack. And that's the one criticism I've always had of the Ospreys, is that I watch them at times, I think they're blunt in attack. They do lack a bit of creativity, but I'm looking forward to seeing Ryan Combia, because I think he'll have a point to prove after being released from the Scarlets. I can understand why the Scarlets released him, because they have to cost cut, don't they? All of our teams have had to release players we might not want to release. I think it's a mistake, mate. Don't get me wrong. Maybe they could have looked at releasing someone else. But, I think Ryan Combia's got a point to prove. I think it'd be good. Cockney Singh, I'm looking forward to seeing. So I do expect Ospreys to be the best Welsh team. I know we're going to do predictions on the next week, so I won't go too much into it. Do I see them going into the top 8, though? I'm not so sure at the moment. I do expect them to be the best Welsh team. What are you laughing at?
The way you say, well, I'm not going to do predictions, but they're not going to make.
No, I haven't told you where they were going to finish. I didn't tell you where they were going to finish. I'm just saying at the moment, I'm not quite sure. Because let's be honest, as good as Ospreys were last season, they had to rely on other results to get into the top 8, didn't they? They had a little bit of luck. I don't know now if they're going to sneak into that top 8.
You make your own luck as well.
I know that, but still, you had to rely on other results.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, it swings and roundabouts, actually, because you look at, to take a leaf out of Cardiff's book on what could have been, you look at narrow losses, right? And actually, or you look at bonus points, and coming into the season, that looks more comfortable than it initially was. So you pick up a bonus point against Munster if Cuthbert doesn't pull his hamstring. So there's 2 points there. So that's an extra point. You look at if we'd have won out in Benetton when we lost 18-13, that 4 points there, it puts it, the small losses that we occurred or that we had, and even actually if our points difference was better because we took them 2 60-point losses, that looks a lot more comfortable. And it is a lot more comfortable because Benetton and Edinburgh, whoever it was, would be out of the question because they wouldn't have the means to get to us. So I get what you're saying in terms of we did rely on other teams' results, but equally we still went out, beat the Stormers away. We still took teams to the sword and made our own luck there.
But I think that's, you could say that for all four of us, where they were games that were too close to call, and you take one game where you're 3 points behind and you're attacking in the 22 kick gets charged, crossfield kick gets charged down, and somebody legs it up the pitch, and all of a sudden you've lost by 10 points. So there were loads of games like that, and I think that's what makes the URC a really good league to be in, is that there are so many of those moments where we could all sit there and go, yeah, but in this game this happened, and in this game this. Even you, Jamie, Dragons came second from bottom, but there were still games there that you came
There were
away
4
and felt,
games. We can all do if buts and maybes. We should have
exactly,
beaten Connor. We should have beaten Edinburgh. We should have beaten Cardiff. We can all play this game, can't we? It's difficult, but James is right. You do make your own luck as well.
I think my closing remarks in terms of I've gone into another window. My closing remarks about this team, right? This team we've got right now is exceptional at nothing, right? I don't know what's happened with my thing. This team that we've got is exceptional at nothing, right? They don't excel in one stat, right? Don't say scrum, right? Because it's not. The stats say different.
Cardiff score better scrum, apparently, haven't they? According to the stats.
Yeah, but they have more scrum penalties won, which is a stat that they do dominate.
But our forwards pass the most, right? Okay, cool. Or our pack has the best tackle success rate. The stats ultimately mean nothing. If you look at the general stats on the URC website, the highest we place is 7th, right? But what we're good at is we're good at everything. We're not exceptional at one thing. We are good at everything. So like Jamie said, we can go toe to toe. We can grind out dog victory. But if we do need to, and we do put it out wide, we have pace. We have centres who can bust a gut, but can also create. We have kickers who are good. They're not exceptional kickers. So if you told me what to describe this team in one word, I'd say balanced, because that's what it is. Because we've not brought in a raft of new signings who are going to have to integrate into a culture. You guys have all made nearly 10 plus signings, right? In various different departments, some in more significant positions of authority, like 10 or like fullback. So what we are is balanced. So we go into this new season where there's probably a bit more expectation because we made the top 8 last year and we went far in Europe. But then also, I don't think there's as much expectation because we're not exceptional. We're not a showy-offy team. I think that's my summary of this squad is that they are good at everything and they are a unit.
And they find a way.
And we've got
Ted Lasso quote again, but they do. They find. No, but to be fair, the Ospreys are gritty and they find a way to win. Look at that game of South Africa against the Lions in Europe. Mm-hmm. They were down to the bare bones. They had kids out there. They still found a way to win. What was the comeback? They came back, didn't they? What was it, from 20 odd points?
It was looking at we were with 7 minutes to go. It was 24-17.
Exactly. That's what I like about the Ospreys. They will fight. They will never give up. And you've got to respect that about them.
And also, if you've watched the documentary, the Behind the Mask thing, you see it, right? That these things can be quite, what's the way to it? Like basically ego boosting. But I don't think this one is. I think what it does is highlights the warts, but it also highlights what Jamie said, is that find a way culture. Is everything they talk about is we don't know when we're beaten.
Right, let's before we move on to the Scarlets then. So if you're liking what you're hearing, then do give us a subscribe on YouTube, because it does make a massive difference. And if you want to hear more of what we're doing, then by all means subscribe to our WhatsApp group. Our link to that will be on our socials. And there's plenty more where this is coming from. So when you're hearing the boys, if you're new to the pod, then you're hearing the boys talking about the Eyrie and Cardiff Central and Dragon's Lair and things like that, then have a look on our socials as well, because there's a whole family of podcasts for you to enjoy. Welsh Rugby, Women's Rugby is coming. We've got an SRC podcast and we've got a URC podcast. So whatever level of rugby you're interested in, by all means, there's something there for you. So let's move on to Scarlets. And so I'll kind of kick off Scarlets pre-season, if you like. So obviously the area that was of most concern last year was the pack. Particularly when you look at some of the players that we lost last year, just through retirement, Sheriff and Samson Lee. And obviously we lost Steph Thomas to Ospreys as well. And there was another one as well who, I know Javon was the year before. But there's been this constant churn, this constant turnover in the front row that isn't really doing anyone any good. And our scrum coach is a second row, which traditionally your scrum coach is a prop. They're the ones that kind of deliver. And our previous scrum coach was a prop and a bloody good one. So I think there's a lot of emphasis being put on recruiting people like Henry Thomas and Alec Hepburn. Marcus van der Merwe coming in at hooker as well is kind of gives us a bit of bulk up front. None of those boys you would class as lightweight, really.
Another one the Ospreys developed, typical.
But there's some big hefty boys. There's a lot of expectation. There is still a core of decent players there. And if you're going to play in the Scarlets, then you need to be a ball handling front three. That's kind of the rule. I still like the fact that we've got open sides playing at 7. That for some games they just carve everything up, and it really is. It's a good game to watch. So there was criticism. There's action being taken. Stuff's happening. Have we learned anything from pre-season? No, because I haven't seen any of those players on the pitch yet. So we're working off videos of how did they play in other systems, how did they play in different teams against different, So we're not going to know until a couple of games into the season whether or not these players are delivering. We've kept key players. Our second row is now stacked with, we've got Fafita, Lousy, Alex Craig, brought Max Douglas in. So there can't be any excuses about that front five anymore. There's big, hefty, experienced, bulky players there that now have to deliver. And I think that's the bit that is key for Scarlets now is you have to deliver, because there've just been too many times in the past where we assumed that the reputation was going to do something for us and it hasn't. So, back row still looks half decent. Whether or not McLeod actually makes it back from injury for any length, I still haven't heard the details of what his actual injury was, but by the sounds of it so far, it may well be a career ender, which
Didn't he drop something on his foot last season? Is that what it was, wasn't it?
It was a training field accident.
Oh, was it?
Yes. But whatever it is, he is a fantastic player that just cannot avoid injuries. So, let's be honest, the Scarlets have lost a lot of very, very experienced players. Foxy, Sheriff, Samson Lee, Scott Williams, Johnny Mack, Kieran Hardy. Those are all players that have spent quite a bit of time injured as well as now gone. So I think that's the key bit with this coming season is developing leadership, and that's a bit where I'm not 100% certain, where we haven't got a player that's going to put themselves forward and go, right, okay, follow me. Alex Craig is the obvious one that stands out, but there's already Scottish sides kind of sniffing around him saying, if you want to play for Scotland, son, you've got to come home, in the same way they did with Tad Byrne. So it's one of those things that we're going to have to cope with. Maybe that's why Max Douglas has been brought in this year, because we kind of know Alex Craig is off next year. But he was outstanding for us last year. Go on, Harley, what were you going to say, mate?
I was just wondering, do you think this is a wider problem because that you're having to bring in Alex Craig, who was brought in because you couldn't replace Ty Byrne? You're now bringing Max Douglas because you need to replace Alex Craig. I know you've stuck Fafita on for as long a contract as you physically could, to try and compensate for the fact you can't give him the same money as France. probably will have to do the same for Lousy. You can have a full match day set of forwards not developed by the Scarlets. And, that surely has got to be a worry. I know you have some, you've got the likes of Kempty Mathias and Harry O'Connor coming through. Morgan Jones, I think, actually had a very good season.
I think
it's got to be an issue.
Yeah, I think we've got enough people coming through. Well, no, I think we've got some people coming through, not enough. And I think that's always been the case. As soon as we find a big un, they hop over the bridge and put a black shirt on, and that's kind of killed us a couple of times where we just cannot develop our own front five essentially.
This was my question for you actually, and and we joke about the non-Welsh qualified the Scarlets, but seriously though, from the outside, it seems like an issue, but it clearly isn't, because you have more forwards picked for Wales than any other fucking team.
Which is why when those players are with Wales, we'll still have a full pack.
That's great, right? But you put this to our group chat the other day, is the consistency of having a full non-Welsh or a majority non-Welsh qualified pack, which you cannot escape the fact that it is harming the development of these young players. And yes, there's the argument that it benefits them because they've got these different players coming in. But are you in a vicious circle of, well, that is literally what Harley said, was we're replacing all these NWQ second rows because the only one we've really developed over the last few years is Morgan Jones. Because Jack Price hasn't kicked on. There was a lot of talk about Jack Price. He hasn't really kicked on. Morgan Jones is the only Welsh second row to come out of the Scarlets with any credit, really.
And yeah, I think it's that two-sided coin of if you go. I think if the squads were bigger, then it works both ways. If we've got another 5 or 6 players in that squad, then having those non-Welsh qualified players coming in and developing local players works. I think it's the balance of the squad, and I totally get why we've gone. Do you know what? As soon as we start losing players to Wales squad, at least half of them are going to come back injured. That's the way we seem to work nowadays. So we'd be stupid not to get players that are going to be there. If you go way back into the dark distance when we won the title.
Oh, did you? You haven't mentioned it twice on this pod already.
I know. But the part of the reason we did that is because we had 3 players in the Welsh squad. Yeah. And the bulk of our pack was non-Welsh qualified. So they just kept playing. We picked up full points when everyone else was away on Wales duty. Bonus points. We were running in bonus points when everyone else was away on duty, and everyone else was moaning, well, why have the Scarlets got all a full strength side and we've got 4 players away with Wales, So
you're not in 2017 anymore, and you're fielding these teams now, and you're getting, your pants pulled down.
But that's what I would say. It's about the size of the squad, and the that balance in the squad. And we won't know whether that's right. If we get to the end of the season and we're top half of the table, then everyone turns around and goes, do you know what? Cracking. Having a non-Wales qualified pack has worked for you. If we're getting tanked at the start of the season, then it goes very much the other way. So that's why I say it's about this team now delivering.
I think Jamie, because I put this question to Jamie, and I think Jamie's probably going to ask us as well, is what is a good season for the Scarlets now? No, seriously, because it couldn't have gone worse last year, right?
It could. We were 3 off the bottom or 4 off the bottom.
But for what Scarlets expect themselves to be, and this is me talking to I talk to Hugh quite a lot. And he says the expectation from a Scarlet's point of view is we should always be a top half team.
Yeah, it is. And
so and you obviously you've got your 2 guaranteed wins over Cardiff, but you can't escape the fact that you lost to Black Lion, things like this. But what does a good Scarlet season next year look like?
So to me, if you look back at when Easterby was in charge, we went up consistently for 4 years. Yeah, every year for 4 years, we went up at least one place in the league. I think this year we probably need to be more ambitious. I don't think we'll take the tankings that we took last year. If we do, then I can't see that coaching team remaining in place. I genuinely can't. I think it's been given enough opportunity now, and I've been a big supporter of maintaining continuity in the coaching team, and let's get that coaching team right, and let's bring players through. All the sounds that are coming out of the Scarlets are moving in the right direction. All the sounds that you look at how many academy players are getting their asses spanked against Leinster, then yeah, we are bringing players through, but we kind of need to do that in a more progressive way.
But we've sung this hymn sheet before with the Scarlets. Welcome
to church. We're singing it again.
But you still haven't answered my question. What does a good season for the Scarlets look like this year?
As long as it's not as bad as last year, it really is as simple as that. There were loads of games last year where there were little elements of positivity that we just couldn't string together for 80 minutes. Then we started stringing it together for 60, 70, 80 minutes, and everything came too late. And this is kind of the frustration with the pre-season game. The last 3 seasons, it's taken us 4 or 5 games to get into the season. And we're kind of sitting there, we're going, well, let's use 3 pre-season games and get the shit games out of the way then. Let's get the full side on the park for those 3 games before, and then maybe only take 1 or 2 games to get up to speed.
It took you 17 games to get into gear last year, so I don't know what the excuse
was
there.
That's how you look at games against Ulster, Munster. At 70 minutes we were in it, and then we finish up 30 points off the lead. The Boxing Day game against yourselves, we're 5 points behind, attacking the 22, drop pass up the other end of the pitch, try, and we're losing by 10 points. So there's bits like that. That's in the same way that you're saying. There were elements where we could, if we'd have done this, if we'd have done that. There were games where it was, quite close. I think the difference is for us, we didn't play that 80 minutes often enough to say, right, okay, that was a good game and we learned this. What we needed to learn last season was to play for 80 minutes. And I think by the end of the season, we were getting there. By the end of the season, it was feeling like we were starting to develop. Just that we don't take that step back down. But we finished the season before on a high. We had a really good run into the end of the season. Took us forever to get going again last season. If we do that again this year, I can't see the coaching team staying. So what's a good season? One above where we were last year, genuinely. But I think if we're either going to kick on and go a lot higher, or it's all going to fall to shit by Christmas and it'll be right. Okay, let's start again. So that's it.
You should be stronger up front, shouldn't you? Because to be fair to the Scarlets, the front 5 was the Achilles heel, and they have addressed that. And I actually think they've made a couple of really good signings. Like, I don't know much about Archie Holtz or Max Douglas. I think they're gambles because we don't know a lot about them. But Marcus van der Merwe is a very good signing. Don't forget, this is a guy, mind, that was close to being called up by the Springboks.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be really good signing. Henry Thomas, yeah, you had to get out in. Henry Thomas is a good scrummager. So up front, you should be a lot stronger. You should have a much better pack. And you've somehow managed to keep hold of Sam Lousy, who was chased by a lot of clubs. They've kept hold of him. No doubt they would have thrown a lot of money at him to keep him, but they've got him. He's 33 now, but nonetheless, they got him. And you've managed to keep Fifth. But 4-year deal for a 32-year-old, it's a little bit desperate for me, I think. And I know he's a quality player, but you don't see clubs handing out 4-year deals to a 32-year-old.
That's mad.
It's a bit odd for me. I'm not going to lie. I think he's a fantastic player for the Scarlets, but a 4-year deal for a 32-year-old is a little bit odd. Having said that, though, you should, at the very least, Scarlets should be stronger up front, which will give him a fighting chance when they're against bigger and better packs, I think.
And it'll take the pressure off him. It'll take the pressure off that reliance on the back row to be everywhere and do everything.
Go on, Jamie. So I
was just going to say one more player I'm really looking forward to seeing for the Scarlets is Max Page, because I think he's a really talented young centre, and I'm hoping that he'll get a bit of game time at Parker Scarlets. That they do give him more opportunities, because I really, really like the look of this kid. I think he's a super talent.
There's a few players I think, from a Scarlets point of view, need to basically show up now. How long does the Carwyn Tuipulotu experiment go on for? He did statistically. I know he was raving about it. He had a good season at the end of the last year, but he's not been consistent. For me, not physical enough for what he is. I think Archie Hughes and Gareth Davis is obviously the big one. We don't know the extent of Archie Hughes' injury. Archie needs to take that jersey by the scruff of the neck. I do think, despite him being Wales' #1, Sam Costello needs to learn how to operate behind a pack that might not be going forward, and needs to start taking games by the scruff of the neck. And Johnny Williams is the other one. Johnny Williams needs to prove his worth.
Just needs to stay fit. You got to stay fit.
But even staying fit, it's being consistent. What is Johnny Williams, right? Is he a big crash ball, I'm going to hurt you 12, or is he a distributor? What is he?
That's what both.
To understand. But
that's the difference. Yeah,
he needs to be effective. Yeah, but he's not at the minute.
When he's firing, the whole point. There's no point having a crash ball. Unless, the whole point of running a crash ball is to bring 3 defenders in. Okay, so you take that one space where one man usually is, and you go on coming straight at you, bang, 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 and then you bring 3 defenders in, and you've got a guy with enough intelligence to go, there's the defenders, bang out, the ball goes out. Yeah, and that's the whole point of running a crash ball. If you're doing it as a pack, and you're running crash ball after crash ball, then you're sucking in back row defenders so that they're not out in the backs, and then you can create damage. So you have to be able to play both games, and Johnny does. Whether he does it consistently enough and whether he makes that decision consistently enough, I don't know. But then you've got Eddie James and Joe Roberts with the dream team centres, and that for me is probably the most exciting part of the Scarlets this year, is putting Eddie James and Joe. I watched Eddie James, Joe Roberts in academy, and you watch them in academy and you go, that's a future, centre partnership. And Eddie James had a good couple of decent games last season. Joe Roberts, again, if he can stay fit and not injured, that's an international pairing right there. That just in the making, and you can see it. You've got the creativity. You've got I think Eddie James is 6'4", so you've got a big, hefty guy who's quick with a set of hands and who can step, and then you've got a whip it outside him that just burns people. So, that's exciting. And then you've got, like I said, Johnny. You've got Costello. We played Yohan Lloyd at 10 on Saturday, and he worked out that he had a right foot that could kick. So, there's stuff that's improving, but it's about delivering. It really is about delivering. The one area of weakness that I think, and I agree with you on this, Jamie, is wings and fullback. I'm still not convinced by Joe Roberts. I thought we brought in 2 wings and fullbacks. Steph Evans still on the books, crocked. But so it just our back three just doesn't work the way it should do at the minute. And that's the one area that I think will suffer this year is back three. But it won't matter because they won't see the ball because we'll have a big back of forwards going forward. So
essentially, you're saying you're going to turn into the Ospreys.
Our new away kit is black, and we changed the dragon and put a pair of sunglasses on him. But no, we've got to balance that game. We've got to balance that game, and it's all well and good playing the fancy, exciting stuff. That's what we turn up for. That's what we cheer for. But we do need to have a little bit of reality every now and again and just hoof the fucking thing 60 meters up the pitch and start up there. So, it's about delivering. This season, they've got to deliver all round, everybody, every day, every game, every training. It's about delivering. And that's kind of me done on the Scarlets, to be honest.
Let's slag the Scarlets off some more.
So the one bit that I will say off-field, yeah. So Lee Jones is an interesting one. Can't wait to see what's happening with him and how he fits in. There are questions around where he sits in the team and what that structure is. We've asked the Scarlets that, so hopefully we'll get the full description of who does what and who's got what responsibilities. But I will say that the one bit that has changed so far this year is the social media team has started getting this act together. And no, I'm going to have what I'd say is the guys that they have got there, is when they're seeing idiots on the social media, they're booting them. And what was happening last year is you were having these idiots making stupid statements and all that, and then you'd have this piling, and it wasn't helping anyone. So it's good that social team now are going, actually, you're a dickhead. Get rid of that comment. Get rid of that comment. And it's going to bring criticism, but I'd much prefer them to do that and rather than allow the dickheads to take over. And on that note, I'm definitely done now. I'm definitely done with the Scarlets. Spoken far too long. Right. Anybody else want to chirp in on Scarlets? And anybody else other than James want to chirp?
Right, okay. It's not an open invitation.
Yeah, what are you going to do at 13 when Joe Roberts is injured? Because Joe Nicholas can sort of fill in there, but it's nowhere near the same pace. And when you have Johnny Williams there, you just end up with 2 12s trying to occupy the same space. And I know Hugh was adamant that they were getting better towards the end of the season, but I didn't see it. You basically just had 2 crashball 12s, and neither of them was. They either were both trying to be distributors, or they were both being trying to crashball, and they just didn't seem to click what was going on. So I think you need to sort of.
Well, Jamie mentioned Max Page there. I've watched Max Page since he was 10 years old, and so I've seen him make a lot of mistakes that probably you haven't seen yet. But he's bulked, and if he learns how to pass, and then he learns when to pass, he's hard. He's very similar to your 12, Keith. He's short, he's stocky, he's hard to get hold of, he's quick. So he may well be the answer at 13. I prefer him at full. I'll be honest, I prefer Max at fullback when he comes into the line, particularly off a second phase ball, second or third phase ball. Him coming into the line, then he's got a bit more space, and his inability to pass kind of doesn't matter at that point because he is quick. But it's whether or not the Scarlets have eroded some of his natural ability to spot a gap and go for it, and kind of replaced it with an ability to pass. And it's whether they've got that balance right. But he's the answer at 13 after Johan Nicholas. I'd still put Johan Nicholas there ahead of him for this season, and bring Max on with 20 minutes to go, half an hour to go, 40 minutes to go as it goes through the season. He isn't at that level yet, but he's getting there, and if he gets the opportunity, he'll get there. Any other questions, gents? Or are we done?
I mean, none that I'm allowed to ask. If I do, I'll just get shouted at on that weird forum.
Good.
You don't have to go on there, like
Yeah,
that's
I do.
just abuse you
I do
bring upon yourself.
because it makes me feel better about my life.
When I talk to most Scarlet supporters go, "Yeah, I don't go on there. It's a cesspit." I
That
don't.
and the Gwlad forum make up the
gosh,
comedy of my day because
Lad, bloody hell.
it makes me feel better about my life.
Right, let's briefly move on then. So, Harley, there was a Wales Women game last Friday.
Yeah,
Or
so
Saturday?
it was running about in parallel with the Cardiff game, so I didn't watch it till Saturday. Talking with the folks on the women's chat, and I think we all very unanimously think something is deeply like. I mean, you could think this was the men's chat, but something is deeply fucking wrong in that camp because they are just going backwards. The one area of strength they had forward dominance, Scotland absolutely smashed through us. Final score was 40-14 to Scotland up at the Hive. Both fairly strong teams. And Scotland could have scored a lot more. They were held up 3 times by Wales, which is a good sign of, good last minute defence. The girls are playing for each other. And then there was one disallowed because Rachel Malcolm, in a very un-Rachel Malcolm thing, got in front of the ball, which I think was probably more just a bit of skullduggery and didn't get away with it. It just it's awful. The kicking game is awful. Like the kicks don't have much distance. There's no chase. There was a bit more pace in the back line with Hannah Jones not playing due to not being in camp because she was on honeymoon. Loads of rumours in camp about the likes of Alex Callender and Georgia Evans not being selected, and there's contract issues up in the air. It just looks terrible, and it's a terrible look on the WRU as well because the first post that the WRU put on Twitter was the team sheet. There was no build-up. I know it's an away game, but still, like, can you imagine a Wales warm-up international that wasn't hyped up? Like, they were throwing that stuff down our throats the minute the Six Nations ended last year.
Yeah.
And it's frankly atrocious. As I said, the only thing worse than the WRU's attitude to promoting the women's game is their attitude to the coaching staff and just letting them sit around and frankly do nothing, as far as any of us could tell.
Well,
can I ask a quick question then? Sorry, Lee. What's gone wrong then, Harley, with the Wales women? Because it wasn't that long ago. Welsh women's rugby was on the up, wasn't there? We had a positive Six Nations. There was a feel-good factor. But it seems to me lately, I don't follow the women's game as close as you do, that we have really regressed. And there's a lot of criticism towards Johan Cunningham. And, he came out and said it was a slow process and a lot of supporters didn't like what he said after the game. What's gone wrong in that short space of time?
It's not necessarily like anything's necessarily gone wrong. It's just that they didn't do anything. They sort of went, "Oh, there you go. We've made third. We're third in the Six Nations. Great. Now we're going to go into WXC1. We got absolutely battered in WXC1, where we were cut up out wide too easily because anyone with a bit of pace could just run straight round us. Our set midfield was too slow. There's no real passing. Lakey George is playing a completely different game to what she's playing at Gloucester. I hinted that maybe that might be to do with the likes of not having like a Mo Hunt and an Emma Singh there to help with a lot of the game management decision makings. But there's just no change. You look at the patterns they're trying to run, which were getting outdone in WXC1. We ran the same things, and Ireland, Scotland, and Italy aren't stupid. They saw what we were doing, so they went back. Hang on, we're 5 meters out. So are we going to play a little fancy move? No, we're going to give it to Cecilia, to Blotto, and then it's probably going to go to Purse, and we're just going to rinse and repeat. And then they get wise to it and held us up. As the other women's teams have become more professional, they start having the conditioning, which means they can hold up against our pack. So now we're losing our one asset, but we're not developing elsewhere. And it's just, nothing seems to have changed. It seems to be rumours that there's some contract issues as well about, some of the a lot of players have left Bristol and they've gone over to Harlequins. Women, and now there seems to be a bit of an issue because the WRU want them to basically be based in Wales all the time, so they don't want them to be too far away. Quins, weirdly, want their players there training. Who'd have knew a club team would want their players? I know, news, right? You'd never hear of that, would you?
So
it all seems toxic. And I said, it just feels like there's no new ideas coming into the camp. So I think I said this during the Six Nations. I think something needs to change in the coaching setup, even if it is just a new assistant coach, to try a new defense, a backline defense, to try a new attacking structure.
Wonder if there's a coach coming into the market very soon.
A coach who's going to make the culture less rotten, you say? And
a coach who can find a way. That's what they need.
Die Young.
Find a way.
No, Dai Young is very happy as head of Cavok.
So to give you
some success so far.
To give you an idea of what the women's rugby WhatsApp group was like on Friday. So we recorded the URC pod on Friday, so I put my phone down and didn't pick it up for quite some time. And you get your notification about how many messages you have. There were 138 messages in the women's rugby pod on Friday night. So there's a bit of work to do on that one. Let's leave it there. Right, gents, thank you very much for your time and company this week. We are 2 weeks away from URC kickoff. So next week is our favorite week of the year, where we get to imagine that anything is possible and anyone can beat anyone, and we get to do our predictions about who ends up where in the table. And trust me, all hell will break loose and there will be arguments. So if you are one of those people that I said at the start that enjoys a good argument, next week is your pod. Next week is the pod for you, because all hell will break loose, especially when James sees that I've put Ospreys in 10th. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen,
Well, you want, mate.
On that note, gents, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy your rugby. I'll see you next week. All the best.
Take care to that.
That was WRRAP, the Welsh Regional Rugby Appreciation Podcast. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us again next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.